won the hearts of so many boxing fans.
Today, we're looking at something that has got everyone abuzz. Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned boxer, has reportedly been knocked out in sparring. And when legends like Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson weigh in, you know it's big. Let's break down what happened and what it could mean for Jake Paul's boxing career. It all started when Jake Paul sent out a text that did a few rounds on social media. He confessed to having gotten knocked out during sparring. Now, for most fighters, this didn't seem like such a big deal. After all, sparring is to teach one a lesson. However, for Jake Paul, who has been quite vocal about his dreams of becoming the next big thing in boxing, what happened was more than just that little slip. So, Jake Paul gets knocked out in sparring, right? Now, sparring is about learning, not winning or losing. But man, if you get knocked out in sparring, it's like a real wake-up call. Getting hit is one thing, but to get laid out? That is another story altogether. Joe Rogan doesn't generally mince words when giving his in-depth, rather intense fight analyses, and that was no different when it came to describing what was going on with Jake Paul. He's got this way of breaking down fights that makes you feel like you're right there in the ring, and this time didn't disappoint. He must have begun by pointing out what Jake did wrong in that sparring session. Maybe he dropped his guard or failed to see the punch coming. Whatever it was, Joe made it clear. Sparring is not to be taken lightly. Jake's got some talent. He's had glimpses of real potential in that ring, especially given he didn't come out as a traditional boxer. His physical conditioning, power, and ability to sell are quite impressive. Those are qualities any young fighter would be very lucky to have. But you know, in this sport, raw talent and just plain old natural ability can only take one so far. Respecting the sport is about having regard for its history, the great warriors of the fight, and the never short but always sweat blood path that any fighter walks. It's respect for the fact that inside the ring, each round is a test not only for your physical prowess, but what stands in the absence of physical greatness: character, endurance, and will to learn and grow. Talk big all you like, sell those tickets, get your headlines, but it won't save you once you step between those ropes. Then there is Mike Tyson, the boxing legend who has gone through every up and down, win and loss, in the fight game. People take notice of what Mike Tyson says. Tyson has touched the top, tasted what it's like to get knocked down literally and metaphorically. In Tyson's case, seeing Jake Paul get knocked out was likely a reminder that boxing is a brutal, unforgiving sport. It's not just the confidence, you gotta have the skills to back it up. Now, from Jake Paul's corner, Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson would have had a really good laugh over this situation. Jake is a loudmouth, always touting himself, talking big, but all that talk gets suckered into a knockout in sparring, so he still has a lot to learn. For Rogan and Tyson, who have both been around a bit, it must be sort of comical to get a reality check from a guy that is new in the sport. But don't get it twisted, these two aren't just clowning Jake for its own sake. The lesson in all this is that both Rogan and Tyson have seen many fighters come and go. They know what kind of journey lies ahead to become a great fighter, such as setbacks and challenging situations. Getting knocked out in sparring isn't the end of your life. Period. For Jake, that might be exactly what he needs to get him to get serious about training. For those who don't know, sparring is supposed to be a training exercise or manner for fighters to train without feeling the need to go full force. But sometimes things get heated. Well, as we have all seen, even a training session can end with someone on the mat. For Jake Paul, this knockout could be just what he needs. If he uses it as a learning experience, that might be what elevates him to the next level. On the other hand, if he starts losing confidence, it will maybe mark the start of his end as a boxing aspiring pro. Now, Jake does have potential, no doubt about it. He has shown he can win fights, but he also has shown that he still has a long way to go. This knockout? It's a setback, sure, but it's also an opportunity. If he can come back from this stronger, this might be the best thing that's happened to him. And this is where things get really interesting. He has a way of making everything sound so dramatic, and it's all cinema time or something. He could have given his best description of Jake Paul entering the sparring ring in a little too cocky a manner, and then wham, being caught by a punch that he didn't see coming. He'd probably talk about how sparring is all about learning, getting better, not necessarily winning, but then you get knocked out. That's a real wake-up call. Jake's got heart, but boxing's more than just heart. It's about skill, discipline, and respect for the sport. He's got a long way to go, you know, but maybe that's a good thing for him. A humbling experience, showing him he can't just talk his way to the top. You gotta earn it. Tyson, no nonsense, likely gave him some tough love. He has been the youngest heavyweight champion, so he definitely knows what it takes to get to the top and be able to stay there. For him, watching Jake Paul, a newcomer getting knocked out in sparring, must have been a reminder that boxing is a sport demanding respect. You can't just be famous or have a huge following. You gotta put in the work. So what does this all mean for Jake Paul's boxing future? He definitely has potential. He has shown he can win a fight, but this knockout serves as a stark reminder that he still has much to learn. It is one thing to knock out YouTubers and over-the-hill MMA fighters, but it is another thing altogether to face real seasoned boxers. Boxing is a very different sport from MMA. It's not all about throwing punches. It's a matter of strategy, endurance, and knowing how to be hit and keep moving forward. Jake Paul has been doing great, but he still has a lot to learn if he wants to stand with the big boys. Joe Rogan has always been very upfront about his opinions regarding how boxing differs from MMA, and he must have mentioned that Jake Paul has a lot to prove. Sure, he has won some fights, but against guys way past their prime or those who weren't boxers by trade. If Jake really wants to make it in boxing, he has to fight against real boxers and win, not against celebrities or guys from MMA. Jake's young, he's got time, but he's got to be careful. The more he talks, the more people are going to want to see him fail. You know, boxing's not like social media where your skills do the talking. Tyson, in his old school wisdom, would have likely impressed on him the virtue of humility and respect. For he knows more than any that boxing isn't about the hype, but it's about proving oneself time and again in the ring. And as much as Jake Paul has flashes of something special, to take him seriously as a boxer, he's got a long way to go. Now, in regard to the fans, Jake Paul's followers may get upset seeing him get roasted by these legends. But hey, that is a part of the deal. Every fighter, no matter how good, has their off days. Getting knocked out in sparring? It might just be what Jake needs to get serious about his training. Well, the real question now is how Jake Paul will react to this. Will he heed the lesson and come back stronger than ever, or does it shatter his confidence? Only time will answer that, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be a lot of fun. So there we are, standing at the crossroads of Jake Paul's boxing journey. And one question still lingers in many minds. What's next for the internet's most talked about fighter? In combat sports, getting knocked out is not solely about the chin. It's one good punch to the ego, resilience, and at times that very spark which sets off greatness. As Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson remind us, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Will Jake Paul rise from this setback, learning the ropes in a sport that exacts respect? Or was this just the stumble that slowed his climb? One thing's for sure. Whether you're rooting for Jake or waiting for his next fall, the ride is far from over. So keep those gloves up, because the boxing world just got way more interesting.